Well, friends, we'll be starting in another 2 minutes. Dr. Unnikrishnan,
Yeah.
I have made you the host again. Are you from?
Yeah.
Can you share?
Sorry?
Are you from two?
Sorry? There's a lot of echo from your side, Dr. Sri.
Two devices you have, I think.
You have got 2 devices.
You're logged into 2 devices,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah. Okay. I removed. I cut off my mobile. Okay,
You
fine.
can mute one. You can mute one.
It was on mute also. I was on mobile also. It was both muted. Still. Anyway, I cut it off. Yeah. What were you saying? Very sorry.
No, you have to share. I have made you the host again. Share screen again.
Yeah. Kar do. Kar do. Okay, fine. So I think we'll start then.
Yes, please start.
Yeah. So good evening to all of you. I think there are about 20 of us here. So moving on to, so we've been covering various topics all through these few weeks. We spoke about the introduction to CBME, what exactly is meant by CBME, what it involves. Then we spoke about the assessment part. We spoke about the integration and alignment. All of these parts were somehow, at least to some extent, known to all of us as medical educators. But this today's talk, I feel, is something that is really a new thing, or at least that is definitely enforceable as a new thing from CBME. That is logbook and portfolio. So these may familiar pictures. There's a lady playing a violin. This is a man who has baked a nice cake. This is somebody who's doing yoga. So I thought I just put these, some of these will be familiar to some of y'all or all of y'all during the last 1 year. Many of us have become lockdown activity experts, right? So so it's a good thing that we've indulged in our hobbies or learned new hobbies and developed new hobbies and become good at it also. But the question then arises, is it okay to say that we have become experts? No? So it's very easy. This particular lady may say, I'm becoming an expert at playing the violin. Any song you say, I can play on the violin. Or this man says, I can bake the best chocolate cake in the city, or something like that. So the yoga lady can say that I can do 24 asanas and all that. So all these are claims. So how do you verify the claims? How do you agree that the particular person is an expert or is competent? So one thing, of course, would be to make them do it in front of you. It's like exams, no? Like when you get exams. Okay, play the violin. You give them a song. Okay, play this song. Play it in front of me, and then you listen. And assuming that you are an expert, then you can judge. Okay, yeah, you have learned, or you are really good, or you're competent, whatever. But that is one way, but that may be good enough if you are one person examiners or no some few people sitting. But how does that person really prove to the world, right? Which is important. So, or suppose a person wants to go ahead in this field, okay, wants to announce the world or wants to move ahead in this hobby. Then what are the options? So for the violinist, you could say that okay, you make an audio file in which you play 10 songs of different ragas or whatever. I'm not a real expert in music, but maybe 5 English songs and 5 Hindi songs and or whatever regional songs, and you make an audio file, and then you send it to 10 acknowledged experts, and then that becomes the sort of this thing. The cake person, the bake man, you can tell them that you make a cake and then get it tasted by uh, experts in the field. Who there are people who write food blogs and food blog experts, food experts, and all, no? And get their assessment, and you make a record of that. And then, similarly, so these would be how you could sort of they could not you they could these people could validate their so-called expertise. So it's not just enough for somebody to say that trust me, expert or pro. You really can't make out the difference just by looking at them, right? So, what is one way to prove expertise, or the more relevant word from our point of view is to prove competence? So, in CBME, we talk of competence. So, the uh, one way, one good way would be to have demonstrable evidence via the logbook and or portfolio. So, these, especially the logbook, has now been sort of enforced by the uh, MCA or now the NMC as a necessary component of assessment of the IMG. So similar to what I said about those people, the wireless and bacon, also suppose there are so many stakeholders in medical education. It could be the NMC. The NMC could declare to the rest of the world. No? The NMC tomorrow can say declare to the world that we produce the best medical graduates. Our IMGs are not just Indian but international medical graduates. Or a given institution could say that no, we are following CBME now. Our medical students are the best; they are the most competent. Or the students themselves could say that I am a pro or I am competent in any aspect of medicine. Or the parents or the society could say that no, we have got the best doctors. So all these are various claims. But once there is a logbook, a hard copy, of course, could be soft copy also, but in black, a logbook is there or a portfolio is there, and that becomes an evidence. We medicine we like to say evidence-based medicine. So logbook or portfolios could be the in future evidence base for CBME and to prove that MGs are really competent. So that is what NMC is saying, and we would have to really sort of tighten our belts and really create and encourage and make our students to make the logbooks. So my SLO's talk is all these to define logbook and portfolio, to understand their role in competency-based medical education, to describe the steps involved in the creation of a logbook, which would basically be as prescribed by the in the two, and line there because I'm not sure it will be fully achieved in this, but eventually, yeah, that would probably be the aim of our session, to be able to develop a logbook by all the listeners, all of the participants in their respective subjects. In our case, ENT and ophthalmology. So first three is what I would be attempting in this session. The talk plan would be like this. First part, we always like to have in topic basic science. So the anatomy and physiology. So a little bit of basic sciences about portfolio, the substance of by the GMER, and it is there in the trainer's manual for SIP2. So this has to be followed, and this part you would really have to pay attention to. And some practical considerations which I thought I could just fit in, and which would be like a takeoff point from what all of us, all of you all of us together would be actually be doing in the future sessions. So this is the talk plan. So ahead to the first part. So definitions by NMC or the GMER. So logbook is a verified record of the progress of a learner documenting the acquisition of the requisite knowledge, skills, attitudes, and competency. So that last part we are very familiar. We always say that acquisition of the requisite KSA, knowledge, skills, attitudes, and or competency. So the underlined word is the key. It's a verified record. So just as I was saying in my introductory thing, the logbook gives a verified record more than any theory exam marks or viva marks or TA by university. Once has got a slightly bigger definition, but it's a collection of learners' progression in tasks and competencies. The underlying part is it's an evidence of events documented in the log. So it can include so many other things also: selected assignments, self-assessment, feedback work-based and in training formative assessments, reflection and learnings from planned activity in the curriculum. So all of these can come under portfolio. Info for when you say meanings actually in the dictionary, first word is original meaning. So what we would call like a file, a loose file holder, or something like that. So it's a hinged cover, a flexible case for carrying loose paper. The word itself comes from that. Then it came as a functions of Minister of State. Then it came as securities held by investor. Then of course the more popular one, when I say portfolios, many of us would think of portfolios of a budding model or a budding actor or actress. No? They click their pictures and it's sent out to so many people, and that is what is called as portfolio. And last but definitely not the least, as far as we are concerned, it's a selection of a student's work, such as papers and tests, compiled over a period of time and used for assessing the performance of progress. So all these are all what is meant by portfolio. I found this one very small, subtle, but very nice sort of differentiation. So logbook, somebody has mentioned, it's a collection of evidence of learning. So it's evidence of learning. Well, portfolio, as they've called it, a collection of evidence for learning. So it's a small, looks like a minor grammatical important. So practical point of view, for us from CBM point of view, logbook is the more important one. The absolute must is logbook. Like we say, must know, good to know, nice to know. So logbook is must have, must be there. Portfolio is nice to be there. What is the origin of the word, how logbook, log or developed? Like many words in English language, like knots, at the rate of knots, so many words has developed from the shipping terminology. This also developed like that. I'll just show that in the next slide. Is the common word for leaf. So loose originally. So receptacle which log picture. Hope you don't get bored by seeing this sort of out of syllabus matter. But this develops, so the ship, a log of wood would be thrown and this rope would be tied, and this knot measure. That's why they say the rate of knots. Master or whoever is in charge of the speed of the ship based on these knots and how the water is coming. So he named it as the log book. So that's how the word logbook came into being from the shipping world from the past centuries. Right? So this is something about the, as I said, the basic sciences of logbook. Now this is another one, an extra bit of info. So I just thought it interesting to see the importance of logbook and portfolio in medical education. So I just went through. I just basically went to, like all of us do, just went to Google Scholar and just did some literature search. So just showing a few articles which I picked up, which I found interesting. So this is from 2001. Some of these are actually many. I think all of these I could get the entire article. So it's some, if you're interested, I think it's so that you can actually go through. To the 2001 article, the objective was to estimate whether students fill their logbooks reliably. The method was comparison of doctors and students' data and measurement of inter-observer agreement. So what they found was, so they checked the students' data of, it was just basically writing a log of the cases seen. It was just that simple. So case seen, diagnosis, management, etc. Just the routine or case presentation sort of thing. But students and doctors separate. And then they checked and they found that there's high specificity. So they didn't miss too many cases, but there's low sensitivity. So the some findings were not there. That was their finding. And so the conclusion was that inconsistencies were there in recording diseases by the students. And so the need for continuous supervision feedback. So this one this thing they tested, the reliability of logbook data. Then recently, 2019, from a German multi-university study, what they did was for final year undergraduates, they made them do the logbook, and using the principle of EPA, which is essentially for PGs, the EPS you consider EPS was used, and they made the final year students maintain a logbook, which was what is done for PGs, and then they studied the usefulness of it by focus group discussions and interviews with both the UGs and the supervising physicians. And the conclusion was that concept showed good feasibility and fosters this was the oriented. So the final student then sort of becomes prepared for post graduation. The concept of having of the concept of EPS and maintaining logbook. So this was the 19th study. Now this was very recent. So you could, this is what, October. So 4 months back from Journal of Pediatrics and Child Health. This I would really say, suggest that all of you all could go to the article and read up. It's very interesting. So this, they have two students who finished their pediatrics. I mean, they finished their MBBS or the equivalent and went on to do PGs. And this is related to pediatric logbook, and it's there. It's sort of like a reflection from them, and followed by their supervisors, the physicians who looked after them, or their preceptors. So it's very nice thing to. I just picked up a few things that they've written. So their reflection was, as junior medical officers now, is that logbook was an effective tool to direct us into the right track of learning. We were provided with the right required context of learning and were guided through the dissonance, refinement, organization, and feedback phase of adult learning to start to consolidate our knowledge, skills, and attitudes. And below is, of course, I've just taken one part just to show that the preceptors felt initially students also expressed dislike of logbooks. Why? They said that apparently it's a very anxious. The pediatrician, whoever the supervisor must have really enforced it very strictly. They found it not nature of a logbook. We hear as reflections of our alumni. It's our experience over 10 years, the vast majority of students do manage to complete the logbook tasks. The reflections, therefore, learning can be facilitated by the scaffold provided by logbook. So this is a really nice article about it, and how it really shows that once they go on later in life, how they found it really useful to have maintained the logbook. So this is something really, I thought something very inspirational, because I would tell you frankly, in my experience, at least in where I am then from Amrita Hospital, we do have a log. We always had a logbook. But as would be the experience with many of you all, maybe not all, some of you all maybe more maintained more decently, it becomes what we say in Hindi, naam ke vaste. So at the end of the posting, or the end of the year, the last before the model exam, they're supposed to submit the logbook. And it'd be like each one's logbook would be like a photocopy, so the same 5 or 10 cases, or whatever is prescribed. The same 5 10 diagrams, the same 5 10 tables, whatever. Everything looks the same. So there's no personal this thing. It's very obvious most of the time that it's just sort of kept to the end, and it's done just for the sake of formality. So, but if it's really done well and the students understand the importance and do it well, and how useful it is for later in their practice and careers. Then regarding portfolios, I just took up articles. So this is one from all the article I got from medical teacher, which is the publisher Francis and Taylor. For these, it's impossible to get the full text. So this is Thomas D.S. speaking about the use of portfolio learning in medical education. So he has said an excellent tool for assisting formative assessment and professional development. So he says that as long as formal assessment is based on philosophy of measurement, which is a key word here, measurement. So we are all obsessed with measurement, right? In terms of marks, in terms of whatever we say, it's basically we've got measurement. So as long as that is there, portfolios will be difficult to assess and will require the development of non-comparative methods of assessment, right? That's another key word there, non-comparative methods. So at least our CBME and MCMC has not reached that level. Portfolios we are not enforcing, but this is something to keep in mind regarding the difficulty of portfolios. This is from a 1999, again from Medical Teacher, the journal. It is so they have got guides actually, Medical Education Guide number 11, then which was one more, which was guide number 24, I think that was also there. So these are guides which my medical teacher comes out with. So this is about portfolio-based learning and assessment in medical education. They have said that portfolios are not new, but their use is still in infancy. While it's not a panacea for all learning contexts, portfolios have much to offer both learners and teachers as we move forward into the new world of, these are key words now, revalidation, clinical governance, and increased accountability. If you remember, even in CBME, one of the key words in the rationale is this increased accountability at the level of society, at the level of social and other parameters. Increased accountability is a key word. So there, then portfolio becomes so much more relevant and important. 2001 medical district, again article, yeah, this guide number 24, portfolios as a method of student assessment. In this, they've actually, I put this because in this they've actually put down 5 steps process: the documentation, reflection. You may know that word usually comes up in this postgraduate dissertation, not our postgraduate, but more in the diploma, in the PhD postgraduation, in their thesis. So they have to come for defense. It's called as a thesis defense. So all these components have been described. So you have portfolio where documents, and then there's reflection on that, and there's evaluation of it, and then the student also has to defend, and then the decision is done. So these 5 steps. Anyway, this again, as I said, we are not there yet as far as portfolio is concerned, but these all things are there in literature. It'd be good if some or all of you all could look up these artists for information, and as we go ahead, move ahead together in this new world of CBME, which has all these new roads to walk along. Yeah, so now this is the process. From here, all this, what I said till now was, to some extent, you could say some time pass things. But now this is the thing. This is what we have to do. So this is the process, and I would like to say that the next few slides are totally from the trainer's manual for. Yeah, so these are the various steps. The first step is we have to decide law, which means basically that all competencies will not us. When we say all of us, I mean ENT and ophthalmology. What are we have got that set given to us from MCI, the competencies. So the first step would be to sit together, go through it, and decide which competencies genuinely need a logbook. The next step is, once you identified those competencies, then you decide or list or make up or define the activities that lead to acquisition of these competencies. So when you say competencies, the first thing we say when we have to teach, we say you break up into SLOs. So we can say for this one particular competencies, you need 3 SLOs. There's maybe one more bigger or more difficult competency. You'll say this may need 10 SLOs. So similarly here, that was teaching learning method, SLOs. Here is the evaluation method. So logbook, you would say that this particular competency, there we would need just 2 activities are enough to say that was to document in the log that the competency has been achieved. But there could be some other competency in which you would say that the student has to document 5 activities. So that's the thing. So you have to list those activities. The next would be to define the level of achievement that determines the successful completion of each activity. So now we have said that so many activities. So there's a particular competency in which you have said that you have listed 5 activities that are needed. Now, for each activity, you say what is the level of achievement. So in the first activity, uh, they should score some 80% marks, or in the second act, not all need not be marks, as I'll show in the future in the coming slides. Or you say that so and so activity it should be done successfully so many number of times, whatever. So a level of achievement has to be defined as the third step. Then the fourth step, naturally, if that level of achievement is not achieved, what do you do? So give feedback, make them repeat whatever. We'll see that. So that's the next thing, decide the action. And finally, you have to have a document. Finally, it's all about documentation, right? The whole concept of logbook sort of begins and ends with the whole rationale of documentation. So you have to decide the method of documentation. So there are 5 steps, and we'll see each of these now. So the first step. So the first step is the first. These are all of there. What I've marked in red is what I have felt are important ones. So the first is very simple. Just sit with your competency and just go to that one column which says K, KH, SH, SFH, P, right? So first of all, just jump onto all that are marked as P. So those, as the MCI has said and MCI has said, those necessarily must have log. So there's nothing to think about it. Straight away, you just pick up all the ones that have P and decide that those all need logbook. Then you go to the SH ones, the show how ones, and there you have to we'll have to, when I say you, I'm sorry, I should not be saying you, we have to then pick and choose which of these do we feel need logbook. So it can be the psychomotor or the communication domain. Then the other things we can say that some of these need self-directed learning. So there is self-directed learning, as I mentioned in our talks on this thing. I remember just adding on that point about reflection. Self-directed learning is not just about the student learning from on her own from YouTube or from online site. It's also about learning at the workplace or at the clinics, in the clinic. So, and then they have to write the reflection. So the student should be encouraged to write her reflections, her narratives, and if possible, this may not be possible for everybody. Not everyone is good at or even capable of creative writing, but at least reflections and narratives uh, should be made to be written by the student with regards to what they saw, heard, experienced in the clinics. Then group activities are, of course, well known, seminars, symposia. But the point here is to remember is it's not just they do a seminar just for the sake of seminar, because we've got a time slot 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. is seminar. So somebody presents, somebody sits, one faculty sits and listens. No, that should be documented in the log. So that's presenting in seminar. Then the next one, of course, not so relevant for us. The next two, at least in ENT, is not so relevant. And regarding K and KH, what they have said is best avoided unless there is a clear documentation warranted. So these are all the things describe the first step, which is basically to decide the competencies that need log. So simplest, of course, are the P1s necessary, and then going down the list as per our decision, as per our keenness to have the logbook. So second step, what should be done by the learner to achieve the competency? So the two things to remember, one is that not all the elements of the competency need to address by a single activity. So which basically means that you would, so you have a competency and you have said that there are 5 activities. So it does not mean that a competency, there will be many elements, not all the elements need to be addressed single. So you have one activity which could be addressing 2 elements of the competency. So there are finer points. General idea is it's not one for one. It's not that there could be 1 for 2 or could be 2 for 1, right? So all these would naturally come to us as we start making the lists. And multiple sessions may be required with progressive enhancement of knowledge or skills leading to the acquisition of competency and may be done across phases. So something that started off the second phase would probably be carried out to the next phase in the 2 terms that they come to us. The third step what determines the successful completion of the activity? So there are four things. Of course, as I said, the two things in red are what I thought are the more important ones. So what determines? So we have to decide what determines successful completion, which means we could have a ranking system, or we could have some mark system, something of that sort. What are the expectation? What are the criteria that meet the expectation? Is scoring required? So which actually means measurable scale. So it is not just about saying, okay, done, this looks good enough, but to actually have a scoring. So you actually have the logbook like a report card. So there is a logbook. So this competency, this activity, and on the right column of that, you would probably put 8 out of 10, 80% marks, whatever, something like that. So is it required? It's not that it should be there, but we have to decide whether that is required for a given activity of a given competence. And last is the big question: should it contribute to the internal assessment score? This is again for all of us to decide. Preferably, be good if over the next, let's say, I would not say next few weeks or months, probably over the next couple of years or next couple of 2 3 years pass by, would come to hopefully come to a uniformity over the entire country about this last thing. So, which essentially means I remember Dr. Binu was there last time when he said about the common thing all over the country, and I said it's almost utopian. But it'd be really fantastic if any student from any medical school, I mean college, any university of India has a logbook which can easily be assessed, checked, or look familiar and similar to any other university anywhere in the country. So should it contribute to the internal assessment score? So 20% is from formative assessment. So maybe we could have something in that 20% from the logbook score. Fourth step is what is done if it's not achieved. So simplest thing, of course, would be just give a feedback and then make them repeat it. And then that looks fine. You could say, okay, you have done it again, and that looks fine. You have just corrected that one mistake which you had made last time. Fine, go ahead. Or there could be a remedial. I think remedial. Ajit spoke so well here. I remember him saying his even written published article about it. So some cases, some things, a remedial would be needed. And this is the documentation. This again is what is prescribed. So these 8 columns would be needed for every student. Okay, again we'll be going through this again one by one. So it can be physical or electronic. So depending on the institution facilities, of course, as we say, ideal would be if we could have both. But in this day and age of saving of going green, so it's always better to avoid papers. So soft copy, electronic, and the next red mark thing, please do keep in mind that submission of a logbook is a prerequisite for taking the final exams. Portfolio or annexure to the logbook can be used to support entries in the logbook. So as I said, as we'll be seeing again later, portfolio as yet is not compulsory, so that word is can be used. But the thing before that is now set in stone that its logbook is a must. There is no escaping from it. And when we say it's a must, it should have the above table, which is put up there. So the first column is the competency number. Second is the activity name. These two automatically come from our list, which you already have of competencies. Third is the date when it was done or when it was submitted. Fourth is the attempt at activity. We'll be going through this in detail in the subsequent slides. The next column is the numerical score or rating. So you could either have a thing like a straight 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 9 out of 10, whatever. Or more commonly advised is the rating scale, which again we'll be seeing in the next slides. Then the decision of the preceptor, whether it is completed or done or repeated or to be repeated or remedial. And then the initial and then the feedback received of the initial of the learner also. Okay, so these are the 8 columns. Now going into these, the first is the number of competency addressed as per the competency booklet. And along with that, you have the name of the activity, which also includes, which could then say whether it's taught as a seminar or as a group discussion or as a DOAP. And the date of completion of the activity. Then, so these three you could say, like when we take a history, we say the demographics. No? So the first three things are the demographics: the name, the number, the name, and the date. Then comes the real important things. One is the attempt at the activity. So was it the first attempt or the only attempt? So you could say that this was the first attempt and that was done. Or whether it was a repeat. So students already attempted, but there was some problem. He has given feedback and advised to repeat of a previous activity. Or if it was really done badly and they have been asked to do it as a remedial activity. So it should be either F or R or RE. And the scoring again, so two options have been given. One is it could be a simple X out of Y. So marks obtained, like as I said, 8 or 9 out of 10. So again, these are all still, as I say, it's still in the air. It's for us to create all these things. Or it could be the rating. So if it's rating, you use one of these three grades. B is below expectations, which would then mean that the student would have to go for a repeat or remedial, or meets expectations, or if the student has done it really well, so exceeds expectations. That's E. So it could be, the rating could be a B or an M or an E. Okay? And if it's a B, naturally it would mean that the student would then go in for something, either a feedback or a repetition or a remedial action. And accordingly, then you have the distance of the preceptor. So one would be C, which is it's completed and closed. So that C actually can stand for three things: completed, closed, and therefore can be certified. So all three are C's actually. So it's C is mean it's done. The student has done well either at the first attempt or at the second attempt or whatever. And it has been now finally activity is approved. That we are therefore saying that the log for this is now closed. The student has achieved as per our satisfaction, as per prescription. Or a student has gone in for, has student, the preceptor decides or declares that the student needs to repeat this activity. So and just when I say activity, I'd like to remind all of you that we're talking of one of the many activities for a given competence, right? So for a given competency, we could be even be having as many as 8 to 10 activities. All this is for each activity. Just remember that. So this table that we are going through now is about each activity. So for a given competency, you could easily have anywhere between 3 to 4 to even 5, 6, 7, 8 tables. Coming back, so activity could be either C, completed, or repeated, or RE, which means needs remedial. So usually done after repetition does not lead to satisfactory completion. Yeah, so if student has got a feedback repeat chance, but still not satisfactory, then it would be a remedial activity. I actually could not, there's a doubt in my mind also whether there's a time gap between repetition and remedial, because if you're looking at something simple activity that happens in the clinics, the repetition could probably be, almost immediately. They've done something and said, no, this is not right, do it again. So it could be straight in front of our eyes and then documented, or it could be next day. And then if they're also wrong, remedial could be, let's say, next week or next session. So this is a little bit, to be honest with you, a little bit unclear to me, the time gap between R and RE. I hope someone can throw light on this, Dr. Unnikrishnan Menon. Yeah, this they have also said that there are separate pages needed for AIDCOM and foundation course. So this is something to keep in mind. So all of these that we said would be for basic competencies which are laid down, but there should be separate ones for AIDCOM and there should be separate one for foundation course also. And then there should be, it could be either subject wise or phase wise. So you could say that a student's logbook is related to a particular phase. So second phase logbook, it could be that way, or it could be the ENT logbook. Of course, from our point of view, it sounds better subject wise. No, I would like to have my student to have an ENT logbook, but there are on the Dr. Rashmi would like to have a student have an ophthalmology logbook, but I suppose looking at it closely, there may be difficulties, and from the institutional or student point of view, probably the other one may be easier. That is a phase-wise logbook. But either way, we have to keep in mind that more important than a given subject is the competency. So the whole idea is there is a certain prescribed competency for which there are so many activities which the student has done to a satisfaction. So that is the key thing, not to get sidetracked by the importance of subject or phase. sorry, just getting stuck here. So these next are a few examples which I've taken from the ENT competency list. So this part is also, till now what I said was all the exact, the hardcore, the substance of the talk actually, which is basically as prescribed by the NMC and which I've taken from the trainer's manual. Now what I'm putting forward is just a few examples which I sort of just picked up from this thing, and this is what we'll all be doing in the days ahead. We'll have to, as we help each other create logbook, create the competencies and activities, we would be all be doing all these things. So this is, I would like to say that I am put the first stepping stone for all of you, all of us. So I've selected these three things. So Dr. Anuja, Vijayalakshmi, all the others in ENT can are free to agree or disagree, because, as I said, the other than P, they have not prescribed specific things. It's for up to us. So I just picked up is because I thought these are important ones. So first one which I picked up was EN 3.2, which basically the competency is to observe and describe the indications for and steps involved in the performance of diagnostic and endoscopy. So, so I believe, because DNE is a very basic thing in this day and age. Every nose case should ideally be undergoing a DNE. So you could easily have any number of, so feasibility also kept in mind for this, for selecting this, because at least in mind where we do in Amrita, we do almost all nose cases we end up doing a DNE. So there's a lot of DNAs being done, so it's easy for the students to easily have any number of observations and descriptions for this thing. So this is one I picked up. The next is, I thought, a very common symptom in ENT, the discharging ear. So it's EN 4.6. The competency is to elicit, document, and present a correct history, demonstrate and describe the clinical features, choose the correct investigations, and discuss the principles of management of discharging. Now, looking at this competency, you can easily realize how many activities would be needed. So there is elicit, there is document, there is presentation, there is demonstration. So each of these, this is one competency in which we could easily have anywhere between 5 to 8 activities just for this competency, and the log of each of those activities. So yes, not so simple, but if it nicely done and done with all the interest and energy, I'm sure that this would look so good and so useful for the students also. The last thing is something, of course, perform. So straight away, these things have to be there. And I must say that I was a little bit disappointed that one of my favorite things in the teaching of students is not there actually in our competency set. That is the tuning fork is not there separately. I had a couple of 2, 3 good looks repeatedly. I'm sorry if I've missed it, but I could not find it. So I've taken, others I would have definitely have put that. But equally good enough or equally important, the performance. So the number is P28.10, and the competency is to perform otoscope examination of the ear. So these three I've selected as the first step. That is, I've decided that these three competencies need to be logbook, need to be logged. So now we move to the second step. Now I've taken only examples, so I'm not going through each step of all of these. So for the second step, I've taken the first one which I selected, was competency. So to remind you, the competency was to observe and describe the indications for and steps involved in. So there are two each. So there is observe, there is describe the indications for, and then the steps involved. So first they have to observe, then they describe the indication, then they describe the steps involved in the DNA. Okay, so this is the competency. Now these are the components. So this is the activities which I have listed. I'm sure you could correct these, you could come up with more of these, but this is how we'll be going ahead in creating the logbook. So the first is, what I've listed is attendance in the ENT OPD procedure room for 2 hours every week. Of course, this is just totally random, which has come from the top of my head, just thinking over how a student is there in ENT clinic in Amrita. So you could say that a given student should be there in the ENT procedure room for at least 2 hours in a week. So let's say she is coming to our ENT OPD for 4 hours every day for 5 days or 6 days. So let's say 20, 24 hours. Out of that, 2 hours This may sound less to some, may sound more to some. I really don't know. But this is what I've put as 2 hours every week for a given student. The next thing I've put down is that each student to orally describe the specific indication prior to observing a DNA. So before observing a DNA, the student should have sort of talked to the faculty or talk to maybe the postgrad student who's in charge of the case, or talk to the patient themselves and to try to find the reasons for the DNA being done, to orally describe the specific indication. Now, orally described may not go into the log, or they would maybe just list it. The next thing would be a written description. So each student to describe the steps as the DNA is being done, so they can say it and then write down. And then the actual logbook activity would be to each student to write 10 such descriptions and of steps of in his or her logbook. So this is what I have written. So I'm sure even as I say it, I myself feel sort of something is, some inadequacy, or it's not looking so good. So this is how we'll go ahead and make up these books, logbook. For step 3, actually, I've taken the other competency, which was to perform an otoscopy examination. So, what are the criteria for successful achievement? So, this is what I've put. So, the first criterion which I've put is the demonstration of the procedure as demonstrated. I think it's a repeat. What I meant was as prescribed or as specified in 5 peers. So, in peers is their colleagues in each other. So this we encourage a lot in our OPD, headwear examination, otoscope examination on each other. So a given student demonstrates doing the otoscopy in 5 of their colleagues. So that is one, and meeting all the specifications. So holding it correctly, our checklist, and that's we are seeing it. The preceptor is seeing it, and then putting the C or the giving the feedback you have done wrong and make them repeat. The next criterion would be demonstration of findings. So students are now in the simulation room. There's a mannequin and otoscope. They are using the otoscope, and the findings change now. So we have it's not a live patient, but the findings are there. So then you could have various things. So you could have wax in the ear, automycosis in the ear, or a clear canal, and then there's a tympanic membrane, and there is a congested TM or perforation, whatever. So there are 10 such scenarios which we have created in the simulation room in a mannequin, and each student has to examine and document the 10 findings. When I say 10 cases doesn't sound correct in a mannequin, so 10 findings in 10 different findings in a mannequin. And third one, this is a little gray area. So I'm being very conservative. I've put just one page, so demonstration, which means basically draw and label of findings in at least one patient of an actual mucosal. So I thought squamous and cholestoma would be a little challenging. So one typical mucosal chronic otitis media, which would be basically a nice perforation. I apologize, sincere apologize to my ophthalm colleagues who are listening. Putting up some hardcore ENT stuff. I actually did go to the ophthalm competencies, and I would at the end I would just actually request Dr. Rashmi to give her comments, because I found one or two parallels. One I thought there was one. I'll just go to that ophthalm competency after this. So the third one was I've put it as findings in one patient of mucosal CSOM. So these are the 3 criteria which I have set for the activities related to the performing otoscopic competence. The step 4 action I've again taken from the SIF2 manual. So what they said is to first you provide feedback and allow repeat. Now this, my doubt, as I said, is the allow repeat is when? Is it immediately, or at the end of the posting you could say, okay, when at 12 o'clock you come back and I'll make you do it again? Or is it next day morning? So there are so many things. So it could be next day morning when you come, the first thing in the morning, the student who has not done well would be repeating. And now if there are 2 repeats are unsuccessful, the learner must review the video available and work the preceptor prior to retaking the activity. So then becomes the remedial. So I'm sure Dr. Ajit also can throw light on this about the remedial thing. My doubt is this: what is the time gap between repeat and remedial? This is the documentation which you have already gone through. So this nice, beautiful looking table then comes up. Again, to remind you all, this table would be for each activity for every competency, which would mean for each competency there will be multiple tables. So they've put the example of the perform autoscopy examination, and this would how it would look like. I even put a numerical rating for one of these, so like 8 out of 10 or met expectations. So this would be complete, and the last part would be our initial end date, and then the initial of the learner saying that the feedback has been received. So this would be the last step. And similar for the 8Com competencies should have a similar but separately. So 8Com, I didn't go to the entire list. Actually, the first that something that always comes to my mind is, which I'm very keen for our students to learn, is counseling of the patient. So if nothing else, I feel our students should be able to counsel a patient about basic conditions. So somebody has come with parents have brought the child with hearing loss, so the students should be able to come counsel the parents about hearing loss, or somebody has been advised surgery, so the student should be able to counsel the person and the person's relatives about the surgery. So that it come, and of course, as I say, even history taking itself is involves a lot of 8Com. So similar, all those 8Com competencies, again we have to do similar things, make list the activities and get the table for these things also. Moving on now to the lesser important thing, which is not insisted upon, that is portfolio. So one definition is this: portfolio is collection of student work that exhibits students' efforts. The collection must include evidence of self-reflection. So portfolio would necessarily include the logbook. So you can think of, like, you have the logbook as a let's say a small folder, a small like a report card, and then you have a bag the student is carrying, and in that bag there is one folder which is the logbook, the report card, and there is another folder which could be a set of reflections, then another folder which would be the actual exam report, exam results, right? Your formative assessment result, your summative assessment result, anything else done in the department. So there'll be 4 or 5 folders in that bag, of which one folder would necessarily have to be logbook, one folder I assume would necessarily have to be the exam results, and at least one more folder should have to be about self-reflection narratives, and then 2 or 3 more folders as per our imagination. So that would be what a portfolio would look like. Again, this is, it's my image, I'm viewing it that way. So portfolios, they say the advantages of portfolio are all these things, that it enhances self-learning, very important. So that's the importance of that reflection and narration, self-reflection, self-learning. Improves tutor awareness of students' need. Okay, helps in preparing for peace. This is key. As I said, somebody else also, one of the articles they did this. So it helps in preparing a student for postgraduate training. Improves clinical learning, definitely. Improves the IT and organizing skills. So many things, so many folders to prepare. Naturally, it would improve their organizing skills. Develops collaborative learning, because some of these skills would need them to sort of tie up and do things with other students and other departments of collaborative learning. And improves assessment system. So these are all supposed to be the users of portfolio. uh, so you could have a learning portfolio, and you could have an assessment portfolio, you could have a showcase portfolio. So I think the showcase would be the real thing, like it really would be a showcase. So an IMG's portfolio, sent across the world, anywhere, whether it's US or UK, anywhere, and it looks very impressive. So that would be the ideal thing. Again, it could be electronic or paper based. We are still not there where achieve that state where we're complete doing away with paper. But yes, looking at the future of the earth and climate wise, it would be ideal if you could have everything electronic. Criticisms of portfolio, obviously we can think of many. It's time consuming, the chance of false information, and therefore the concern over originality, concern over the structure, the uniformity. Again, when you talk of our country, India, the uniformity is always a huge issue, and the inter-assessor variability. So these are all the criticisms of portfolio. And as per the GMR of MCI, logbook is mandatory, portfolio is optional. So what we have discussed today, what we've seen today about the logbook, we have to start applying our minds to it at the earliest, especially the 2 things. If nothing else from this talk, 2 things, please keep in mind for logbook. First thing is to decide the competencies that we need, that we feel needs logbook. And immediate next step would be to break down, just like we break down competency into SLOs for teaching learning, similarly break down competencies into activities to be logged and documented. These two things we have learned from this talk, that's it, because that is the crux of it. Everything else will flow from that. Yeah, thank you for patient listening and question, answer, and discuss debate time.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, Rajit.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. It was a very new topic for every one of us, and you have made it.
Yeah, for me also.
Yes, sir. But sir, you have made it in a very simple way to understand for every one of us. And sir, especially the analogies that you gave to make us understand the difference between a logbook and portfolio. They were very important
Yeah.
because many times,
Yeah.
yes, many times there's always a confusion whether it is a log, what is a logbook, what is a portfolio.
Oh, I think that
But
we should be very clear. Good, you raise this point that
yeah,
there should be no confusion in our minds at all. Please, all of you. Logbook is very
yes,
clear cut. It's like a if there is a confusion, my request will be to forget about portfolio. There should be no confusion in our minds. If there is some confusion,
yes,
तो भूल जाओ portfolio के बारे में.
yes,
Portfolio
sir. But
नहीं है.
sir,
You
the
think people
slide
did
that
not
you showed,
hear about it. Yeah.
but the slide that you showed, that logbook is a record of learning,
Yeah.
portfolio is a record for learning. So I think
Yeah.
it clearly clears our doubt that one is
Yeah.
mostly concerned with summative things, logbook,
Yeah.
while portfolio is more of a formative type of
Yeah, and
document.
it consists of many things. Portfolio, as I said, it's like, the way I visualize it like this. It's like a suitcase in the student. When you open the suitcase, there are many folders in that suitcase. So one
Yes,
folder is the logbook, one folder would be the exam results, etc., etc.
yes,
So yeah, and Dr. Ajit, could you answer that this is repetition remedial? Do you know?
yes,
What
sir.
is the
Sir, I was to about the point. Sir, again, as you said, that there are no clear-cut rules or guidelines as to when the remedial measures should be taken. But again, it will depend, I think, on more of the competence in the task which we want to do the remedial measure for. If we want to, but yes, if you want that a student should, he has not performed anything and he wants to repeat it, if we want to get him repeated, then maybe depending on the task, we can give him a day or two. But I think the main thing is that the remedial should measures should be done as early as possible rather than waiting for some later period of time.
Okay, so that was my doubt. You feel that way? Okay, fine. Okay.
So I feel that way. And sir, regarding second thing which you told regarding the phase wise or subject wise logbook, which is better. So again, it depends on the institute. But what I think is actually subject wise should be good, but there are few subjects which run across the phases.
Yeah. Okay.
So the
So do you
student will have to
think just
preserve
sort of academic interest, do you think, do all of you all think that ENT and Ophthalm can be subject wise? Because it does
they
not
can
really
be,
run that much across.
but again, sir, again, I don't know whether institutes will allow to keep
That's what
subject
institutes may
wise
not
or
allow.
to phase wise. So
Yeah.
if it is phase wise, then we have to comply. So, sir, the advantage of subject wise is very clear that our own subject is there, so that we can monitor it very well. But the only advantage of phase wise, which I feel, is that it has to be preserved for a shorter period of time. So there are very less chances of losing it or
Oh, okay, agree. Yeah, I didn't think of that. That's a good
maybe.
point. Yeah, true.
Yeah, and if there are some subjects, for example, medicine and surgery, they run across the phases, maybe 2 or 3 years. So the student will have to preserve that same logbook over a period of 3 years
Yeah.
as compared to Facebook. So that is what I personally feel. But again, it will be a point to discuss again, sir.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And the important thing is that logbook is again, it's not an optional thing for now. 20% of the formative assessment marks will be from the logbook, but more important is that it is now the submission of a completed logbook is now the eligibility criteria to appear in the university examination. So so it's no more of an option thing. You have to do it now.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. I think only, sir. This is Dr. Anuja.
Hi, Dr. Ajay. Yeah.
Good evening, sir. I think you have beautifully put out the difference between a logbook and portfolio.
Yeah.
I think this analogy which you have given about a suitcase having different compartments, which is a much broader term. So portfolio is a much broader term, and logbook becomes a part of it. So as you said, logbook is compulsory and portfolio is optional. But definitely, if we can attach the annexes, as you said, for the different parts of the process of learning, STL, and you talked about reflective writing, I think you've made it very simple. And the points which have been added by Dr. Ajit, I think, Dr. Ajit, I'll just like to tell you, because in the institution, because in most of our institutes, the students have completed the first year and they'll soon be entering the second MBBS. So we are already preparing for that. So we are also going subject wise. But you very correctly pointed out for medicine, surgery, gynae, and even actually ENT postings will be starting for second MBBS. So they will be preserving our logbooks also for almost 2 years now.
Yes, madam.
Yes, so that is a very important point, and they'll be preserving so many logbooks. So, from the student point of view, definitely. But I think something we can do is, which I thought, is that once ENT has maybe decided upon how they would be going about the logbook, we could have phase-wise meetings, which we are doing in our institute. So, for example, ENT ophthalmology and PSM, we could be sitting together and then deciding one. So that will be another aspect to that. But yes, we will have to tell the students to maintain these logbooks. And that is why, as Unni sir has pointed out, that we can have paper and the soft version. So definitely the soft versions would add this advantage of being paperless and maintaining so many logbooks.
Yes, ma'am, and it will be easier to preserve the logbooks once they are in the
Absolutely.
electronic mode. Yes, madam.
Absolutely. You're totally right on that. And we totally agree. And I'm sure we are going to opt for the electronic versions very soon, because having maintained, because they're getting posting in almost about 10, 12 subjects from second MBBS. So having to maintain so many logbooks would definitely be very difficult. Even if we keep the smaller subjects like derma and pediatrics to be a part of medicine, still they would be maintaining about 5, 6 logbooks. That will be very difficult. Electronic version will have definite advantage.
Yes, madam. Yes.
Good evening, Dr. Vijay Lakshmi here.
Hi.
I agree with Dr. Anuja, and a couple of institutions I have discussed this with have already adopted the e-logbook through a mobile app, and they also also can be used on a browser. So they have already done this, and they are finding that it is working well. But they are parallelly having the hard copy also for time being. Soon they're going to do away with the paper-based logbooks and keep it only the e-logbook. So that will be fine. But as of now, since you were discussing whether it should be subject-wise or phase-wise, and as Dr. Ajit pointed out, medicine, surgery, OBG is across semesters. ENT and ophthalmology, for looking at it from the student point of view, we can combine it as a single logbook, but as of now, because it would reduce their baggage. Hello?
Yeah, your
Hello,
voice is
can you hear me?
breaking.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes we may be retaining the logbooks with us to check them and putting our initials on them. So parallelly, they may have logbook submission in the other departments, and that may add to a little bit of confusion. So that is something we need to take a call. And regarding this repetition and remedial, so far as the NMC, the MCI document says, you can give any number of repetitions to the student and give them a chance to improve on that particular competency and become, reach our expectations. My question here is, how many times do you give the student a chance to repeat the same activity before which you declare that he is fitting for remedial actually?
That's what in the trainer manual they've written is twice. It's only 2. They've made it, that number is into 2.
Okay.
That was, that's like it was not my example. It was trainer's manual. They mentioned repetition as twice. My doubt is the time gap. What?
But how do we fix that? Because every activity, it may not be 2 repetitions. It may need, some activity may need more number of repetitions. Say doing a tuning fork test, only 2 times the student may be learning. But there are certain skills that may require more number of repetitions to achieve that level of competency.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So that we have decided. But
Good evening, everyone.
hi.
Wonderful session, Dr. Unni.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Rashmi.
Yeah.
And just Dr. Rashmi, can I just add just to out of a guilt feeling, I had just gone through Oftal, and I'll just quickly. I
No,
thought I just wanted to read from. There is this OP 9.1, demonstrate the correct technique to examine extraocular movements. So I thought that was.
I will just cover the option now. Dr. Unnikrishnan?
Yeah, sorry.
Not very well. I will just speak about the ophthal part for the ophthal participants. Before that, just to chip into two things what you mentioned. Even in our institute, this practical problem of having a common logbook for all the subjects of the same phase is that, the students play hooky. They are like, the logbook is with anatomy. How can the physiology sign it?
Okay.
So this was a practice. So we chose to have separate logbooks. Another thing, competencies such as ATCOM or departments or subjects which are being built longitudinally, such as all the clinical departments, community medicine, all of them require a logbook which has to be carried across, because we cannot have a separate logbook for phase 2 and separate for phase 3. The competencies are building along. So we have to have a record of what the student has learned with us during the phase 2, which we will build along in phase 3. So all of us clinical departments, our logbook will have to be longitudinal. The smaller subjects, dermat, psychiatry, these departments in the institutes can take a call if they are comfortable. But in my opinion, I would still suggest it's better to have a smaller logbook rather than to mix up two logbooks. You see, if you lose one, you're losing two subjects at a time or three subjects at a time. So that would be one part of it. Remedial and repeat competencies. When we are asking the student to repeat, our document at no place says how many times are we going to ask a student to do a certain thing. So in ophthalmology, visual acuity testing is an extremely important competency.
Yeah.
Some students pick it up once, students require up to 3 to 4 times. So this is the part where they mention that experts in the department need to define how many times a student has to do a certain things. That is practice it. And when we are filling up the logbook, if we feel a student has done either a minimum number or if he has achieved competency before doing that, the department can take a call. So if you're talking about the tuning fork test, if you feel a student can minimum requires 3 times to do it, you can put it up as minimum 3 attempts, or if he can achieve the required competency earlier. So this has to be decided by our individual departments. This is how the phase 1 has also approached this concept of how many times will they be doing it. So that is the thing which, as we are discussing in our individual departments or in groups like this, where we will be discussing about.
Yeah, I agree with you, but just to remind you and everybody that this, how many times is not required in the table, because the table specifies basically one column specifies it's B, M, or E, and the other table is F, R, or RE. Just to sorry, C, R, or RE. The number of times is there's nowhere. It's not part of the table. Yeah, just to.
Correct. But when I'm making a print logbook, if I would like my student to do visual acuity 5 times, where I put that competency, I'll minimum make 5 rows. Otherwise, the student will have to make another notebook to write his daily work. So the table is a guide where they have just given once. Now, if we choose this is a difficult skill, so our number of rows will increase.
Okay, yeah.
So currently my ophthalmology logbook since last 2 years is competency based, where we have not gone by the level. What we have gone by is the minimum number of times a student is performing a skill. So this was decided in discussions in department. So each competency, each skill they are doing has got a X number of whatever number of rows we decided, and plus 1 or 2 extra if we want to. So, okay. Now the ophthal part, okay. So I'll just take very, very simply, I'll go to one of the basic competencies which we talk about in ophthalmology. So our whole booklet, that is the volume 3, has most of the time spoken about the knowledge part. Now, one of our simple competencies is demonstrate the steps in performing the visual acuity assessment for distance vision, near vision, color vision, pinhole test, the menace, and the blink reflexes. Now, actually, in mentioning one competency OP 1.3, they have included
six things.
six skills they have included. Yeah, and actually, when we made in our logbook, we have added contrast also in this.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this again depends on the department. Okay, because we as Ophthal felt that contrast is extremely important. So we wanted the student to be able to assess that also. Okay, so if you just go through it like sir correctly pointed out, just pick up any area which is showing S. For us, almost each of the section has got minimum 1 to 2 S's are there. One simple thing is in the lid and adnexa one, they have described lot of clinical conditions, and the skill component says demonstrate the symptoms and clinical signs.
Okay. So that becomes.
Conditions enumerated in previous one. These are conditions like sty, calazion, simple things. Okay, so when we are breaking it up, our competency would start with the ability to take a history in case of abnormality in lid. Second, in a simulated patient, in a real patient. Second would be the ability to create or to make a differential diagnosis based on the history. The third, that is the clinical reasoning skill. The next would be the examination of the lid. This will also include skills such as counseling skills. So just like how Dr. Unnikrishnan sir broke up the ENT competencies, exactly in the same way, in our logbook, we have got competencies which have components of skill, that's the actual psychomotor what they are doing, as well as counseling part in them. Whether we are doing it in simulated or we are doing it in a DOAP manner, whether it's an observation or a performance level, is to some extent mentioned in the book, but otherwise, most of the times we can decide it in our own way in our departments. I think it's exactly the same way how it was in ENT also. So, any doubts from the Ophthal? Because sir has explained very well, and only the last part about examples was not related to Ophthal. Otherwise, what sir explained holds true for both our departments. So,
Thanks, Rashmi. I think again, just to remind everyone that the simplest thing all of you can do is just to go and pick up all the P's first. Whichever is marked P straight away goes into the requiring logbook category. And then the SSH you have to pick and choose.
Can I make a suggestion?
Dr. Chanel, yeah, hi, Dr. Chanel, yeah.
Actually, what I was thinking, like we can have the subject-wise competencies in the form of A4 size cards, and then we can do a spiral binding of everything.
Yeah, so that is one thing. Spiral binding is one option. So that's
yes,
which basically means hard copy. We are insisting on a hard copy. That's the only issue.
Exactly. Actually, it's a very good option, especially when we are doing it for the first batch, because there will be things which we will also learn along with them. So rather than giving it for binding and not being able to add on things, spiral binding would be an awesome idea. So, and you know, right now, because suddenly the students will just join us. The phase 2, we have just prepared the timetables for clinical posting. So they are going to be joining us soon as the exams are over.
Yeah.
So spiral binding would be a very practical solution. Very good, nice suggestion, Dr. Chanel.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do we have any other doubts, especially from anybody from Ophthal, if they have gone through the competencies? Any specific thing if we can discuss?
Actually, what I would request is, if you don't mind my saying this, Dr. Shmi, that to all of you all, that once you, I think Dr. Sanjay Bedi will be sending this talk, I think he sends after in about a week's time, right? So when we get this, if you could just see the slides and then sit with the...
I can send it tomorrow also, no problem.
No rush. What I meant was once you get it,
yes,
वो एक side रख के, and then you open your, whether it's ENT or Ophthal, open a competency list and start sort of marking, and at least in the mind, at least start making the activities for the desired competencies. I'm just starting to be, I'm becoming like a teacher and starting to give homework. But I think that's the only way. I really think it's a challenging job. I really think so. That's why I'm already getting a little apprehensive and anxious. Let's start doing things.
No, our level 1 apprehension got over almost last week when we prepared the clinical topics for all the 11 clinical departments. That is 36 weeks of posting, which clinical posting students have.
Acha, bana liya? You can, okay,
So
okay.
now most of the clinical departments, we finished that. So most of the 11 clinical departments have given the competencies which they want a second phase student to talk about.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's still work in progress. Lot of work has to be done,
That is
but
first
still
step. Yeah, but
we
as
have
you
got
said, the
that
first
step
step
1
taken.
done.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, of course, they'll be discussing in the phase-wise curriculum committee meetings. And one more thing, I think we also need to look at the teaching learning methods, because when we are talking of skill, the NMC document and otherwise also, there are several ways of teaching a skill, which we have already discussed in previous session. So now our table, our blueprint also needs to add that component. Whether we are letting a student do hands on, or DOAP we are doing, or is it using models or chart papers, how are we assessing each one of them? So the exact teaching, because we keep writing DOAP everywhere.
But I think
So
ENT
that is
ophthalmology
something we all need
I
to work
think
on now.
probably DOAP would be the vast, the 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 giant would be DOAP only.
uh, yeah, actually again depends on the settings which we have, like a good model for doing otoscope, ophthalmos, these are all there. Or a model if they can demonstrate on things, like we have a model for syringing. So normally
Okay.
syringing is not something that my student can do, lacrimal sac syringing, okay, which is again a common competency between ophthalmology. Yeah, but we have a model made by our students where we can actually give them a hands-on practice of how they are doing this,
Oh, nice.
or how the fluid will flow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are the things which we as teachers will have to, sort of think about it and innovate. So I was waiting for anything from any of our ophthal participants. Okay. All right. I think on the chat, you had a very descriptive, nice session. So I think most of the doubts are either cleared, or has cleared.
that we'll come to know very soon.
I know. So,
So I before closing, actually, I wanted to know, as per our list, we have actually come to the end of our the faculty talks. Actually, so now what is the next plan, Dr. Sanjay Bedi and others? आगे क्या?
आगे, I mean, you have to divide all the competencies into 10 parts, or maybe since the numbers are slightly low, so you can have it 5 parts also, and divide all the participants into groups, and then in your own group you will discuss those that portion of competencies which you has been given to you, and then you will present it on in the main group. I mean, this is the practice which we have been following.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, I
all
remember
the
in the
batches.
community medicine. Yeah. So then the question then comes that the groups would have to be subject specific. The ENT group would have to be
Yes.
separate from off-style. Yeah.
it's true.
Dr. Arvind Sangvi had raised the hand. Dr. Arvind Sangvi, go ahead, please. You had some doubt.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Dr. Arvind.
Sir, just I wanted to add a thing
Yeah.
that during the logbook you said there are different phases across, because our ENT or ophthalmology, I think they are posted in the 4th semester first thing, and again in the 6th semester.
6th semester.
What we have done is in our college, I think long 7-8 years back, it is, if you go back and see the schedule, it is not mandatory and it is written desirable, and you can make changes at your institute level. So what I have done is I've spoken to the committees and to the university. We changed in our college of ENT posting and Ophthal posting in the 6th and 7th semester. So they are coming
Okay.
back to back
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah,
6th
yeah,
and
yeah,
7th.
yeah. We also asked for it, and it had happened actually last year, from last year only. But now with CBME, there's no option. I think we have to have that.
So that is making, I think, this logbook will be easier to maintain
Yeah,
because
definitely,
it is
definitely.
not
It's a
a
huge
gap of
difference. Yeah,
1 year they are
yeah,
coming here.
yeah, yeah.
So that gives an added advantage and
Yeah.
also the continuity for the students. And as you told, there might be like when we should repeat the perform or
Yeah,
procedures.
yeah, yeah.
There even at the same time or in the next posting when they come
Yeah,
back,
next
we
question.
can
Yeah, then if
that
it's so
can be
close, it
taught.
becomes very easy.
Because when it is across the phases, like in the 4th or 6th semester, there will be a long gap.
Yeah.
So this, I think some of the institutes, they can talk to their curriculum and universities where it is, we can adjust from 4th to 6th, to 6th to
Yeah,
7th
6,
sem.
7.
That will
Yeah.
be a better option.
With the current CBME one, that will not be possible. In the earlier one, it was mentioned desirable. But with the current CBME one, they have insisted on the
Yeah,
clinical.
it's not possible. Yeah, they will not do it.
Yeah. So this flexibility is no longer given to the institutes.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Earlier, it was like, even Ophthal ENT never had a posting in phase 2. They had a posting 8 weeks posting directly in 6th and the 7th semester. Ophthal had a posting, 2 weeks was there. But now that option is not there because as per timetable, it is 36 weeks of total clinical posting. So they will not be, I don't think that flexibility of shifting entire 4 weeks will be there.
No, we discussed it in another group of ENT faculty as well. It is not possible to even make a small change to the posting schedule, like how we did it earlier. We were doing like someone just said 6th and 7th term. Now we cannot do it. We will have to do it 5th and I think 6th or 5th and 7th.
4th and 6th. It's 4th and 6th, right?
It's phase. It's phase. Actually, they have not mentioned semester. They have said it is
Yeah,
phase 2
yeah,
and
yeah.
phase 3.
Phase 2
So
and 3.
some student may come to us in 4th sem, some may come in the 5th sem also. Depends on the college schedules.
Only thing we can do as of now is this 2019 batch is kind of a trial batch. So have a system of feedback, student feedback, because the change that we had done earlier, shifting to 6th and 7th term, was definitely based on the student feedback. They preferred that they had their second posting in their term, which end of which they are appearing for exams. Because earlier we had 4th and 6th term ENT postings, and they said neither do we learn in the 4th term nor do we learn in the 6th term.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
7th term there is no posting. We are ready to appear for exams. Our results are a disaster, and that's why we brought that change in our institution. Now what we need to have is, since there is a change, we need to implement this change and have a system of feedback, analyze it and keep it so that later on we can furnish it to the NMC and see what changes we can do for the benefit of our students. So that's all we can do as of now.
Right. Right. So I think further steps we'll discuss in the faculty group and take it ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Sanjay, a request if on the faculty group, if we can know how many opthal participants are there, because based on that we'll have to divide. I'm not sure of.
Yes. I will provide
Yeah,
the list.
sure. Because that division will depend a lot on that. I'm really not
Yes,
sure how
yes,
many are opthal and ENT.
yes. I will provide. I will provide both the lists in the
Sure,
faculty group. Yes.
sure.
Uh,
So based on that, I think we'll again communicate to everybody on the WhatsApp groups only,
yes.
so that which direction we would like to take and
Yeah.
what next presentation.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So
Uh,
we can.
So I think we're done for today, right?
oh
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
It's already 8:34. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lamba
Thank
chala discussion. Chalo.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Uni. That was a wonderful session indeed.
Thanks, thanks, Ashwin. Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa. It
Thank
was
you.
Thanks,
wonderful as
everyone.
always.
Yeah.
Thank you,
And
sir.
good night,
Thank you. Good
everybody.
night, everyone.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.